Okay, so you want to buy an airport. You've seen the runways, the control tower, the planes lined up nose to tail like cash on a conveyor belt. Hundreds of thousands of people pour through these buildings every single day, and every one of them has already paid to be there. It looks like the most obvious money machine ever built. Here's the strange part.
The planes barely make any money at all.
At a typical North American airport, the single most profitable thing on the entire property isn't the jets, or the landing fees, or the duty-free Toblerones the size of a small child. It's the car park. A slab of concrete with a barrier on it out-earns the runway. The traveler who leaves their Honda for a week pays more per square foot than the 200-ton aircraft on the tarmac. And that's just the first lie this business tells you. Because around the world, a tiny handful of very quiet investors have gotten staggeringly, generationally rich buying airports. And in America, the richest aviation market on Earth, almost everyone who has ever tried has failed, spectacularly, and handed the keys straight back. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what it costs to get in, how an airport actually makes its money, which is almost nothing like you think, why the busiest infrastructure in your city can barely turn a profit, and why a handful of outsiders quietly turned that same business into one of the best investments on the planet. And, as always, why you could pour billions into one and still walk away with nothing. Let's start, like we always do, with the price list. There are really only 3 ways to get a piece of an airport, and they're 3 completely different businesses. Option 1 is the slice. You don't buy the airport, you buy one organ of it. A terminal, the car park, the little train that shuttles you between gates. Governments love this because they keep the crown and you take the risk. In New York, private consortiums have sunk billions into rebuilding the terminals at JFK and LaGuardia. In Los Angeles, a private group built the automated people mover and the rental car complex. You're not the landlord of the airport, you're the landlord of a wing of it. Entry price, hundreds of millions, and you'd better love construction. Option 2 is the seat at the table. Somewhere out there, an airport is already privately owned, and you buy a stake in it from whoever owns it now. This is a strange, clubby little market. A Canadian pension fund swaps its slice of Sydney Airport for slices of Brussels and Copenhagen. A Danish state fund buys in for the better part of $2 billion. These stakes get passed around between pension funds and infrastructure giants like trading cards for hundreds of millions to several billion a time. You never see a runway. You just collect the check. Option 3 is the whole kingdom. You buy a major hub outright. London Heathrow, Sydney, entire gateways to entire countries. The price runs into the billions, sometimes well over 10. But, and this is the catch that defines the entire American story, you can only do this where the government actually lets you. And most of the world does. By 2025, more than 850 airports across over 90 countries had private money inside them. In the United States, you can count the fully privatized commercial airports on one hand and have fingers left over. For a country obsessed with private enterprise, that number should stop you cold. Hold on to it. It's the whole twist of this video. So let's say you've got in. Now, how does this thing actually make money? Your instinct says the airlines. They land here, they park here, they fill the gates. Surely that's the engine. And airlines do pay. They pay landing fees, gate fees, a charge for every passenger who walks through. The industry calls this aeronautical revenue. Here's the problem. Those fees are capped, regulated, and fought over line by line. At many airports, the airlines have to approve major decisions before they happen. In the US, to privatize a big airport at all, you historically needed something like 2/3 of the airlines to sign off. And under certain agreements, the lovely jargon is a residual deal, if your shops and car parks make too much money, that profit gets clawed straight back to lower the airline's fees. Sit with that. The tenants you assumed were your customers are actually your regulators. They can veto you, cap you, and skim your upside. Globally, all the world's airports together pulled in around $79 billion a year from this airline side of the business. And it's the part they fight hardest over and control the least. So if the planes aren't the engine, what is?
The engine is the moment right after security.
Think about who that traveler is. They're early, they're anxious, they've got nowhere else to be and money in their pocket. They are, commercially speaking, the most captive customer in the world, and you have built a shopping center around them and locked the only exit behind a departure gate. This is non-aeronautical revenue, retail, food, drink, rent, advertising, and the big one we'll get to in a second. Worldwide, it's worth around $54 billion a year. Smaller than the airline side, but here's the difference. This is the money the airport actually controls. No airline negotiates the price of your airport sandwich. In the United States, this commercial money makes up nearly half of everything an airport earns. The model is beautiful in its simplicity. You don't sell the perfume yourself, you rent the space to someone who does, and you take a slice of every sale on top of the rent. A modern airport is not really an arena for planes. It's a high-margin mall that happens to own a runway, and the runway is the loss leader that herds the shoppers in. Quick crash course so you can nod convincingly in the boardroom. Enplanements. Fancy word for bums on seats. How many passengers board? Every projection in the building is built on this one number, and as you'll see, that's exactly where the bodies are buried. Aero versus non-aero. Planes versus everything else. The planes you can't really control. Everything else is where you get rich. MAG, Minimum Annual Guarantee. The floor, a shop or a car park operator promises to pay you no matter how badly they do. Your safety net. Residual versus compensatory. Whether your commercial profits get handed back to the airlines or whether you keep them. This single distinction is the difference between a money machine and a charity. Right, you're fluent. On to the crown jewel. Here is the fact that breaks people's brains. The most profitable thing in the building is the place you leave your car. In North America, parking alone is around 43% of all that commercial, non-aeronautical money. More than the shops, more than the restaurants. Globally, it's about a quarter. And the numbers are not small. Dallas-Fort Worth pulled in over $251 million from parking and ground transport in a single year. Why? Because a parking space has almost no cost. There's nothing to buy, nothing to restock, nobody to pay behind a till. It's asphalt and a barrier. And the customer has no alternative at 5 a.m. with 3 suitcases and a flight to catch. It is the closest thing to free money the legal economy has ever produced. And the smart operators have figured out something else. They've started treating a parking space exactly like an airline treats a seat, as a perishable asset. Empty at midnight, it's worth nothing forever. That night is gone. So they price it by algorithm, by the hour, by demand. In 2026, parking rates at the major hubs jumped anywhere from 9 to 40% over the year before. The drive-up price can be 60% higher than if you'd booked ahead. That isn't a fee. That's the business model wearing a high-vis vest. So who actually got rich doing this? Not the names you'd expect. The biggest airport owners on Earth are infrastructure funds and quiet construction giants you've barely heard of. Ferrovial, which long held London Heathrow, the French builder Vinci, the operator of Frankfurt, the company that runs Paris. But the cleanest legend in this business is an Australian outfit so good at turning infrastructure into fortunes that there's an actual book about them called The Millionaire's Factory. That's Macquarie. For years, Macquarie was the world's airport landlord, and the numbers it walked away with are almost rude. On Brussels Airport, by the reporting, it turned an investment of around 1 million euros into a stake it later sold for roughly 2 billion. Same playbook, different runway, over and over across Sydney, Copenhagen, Brussels. They weren't standing on the tarmac in a high-vis jacket. They were sitting in an office in Sydney, treating airports as what they truly are, toll booths attached to shopping malls, with patient money and decades to wait. That's the dream. Buy the scarcity, clip the tolls, sell the appreciation to the next fund down the line. So why is America, again, a graveyard? Here's where it all falls apart. Because for every Macquarie quietly compounding billions, there's a city that tried to sell its airport and ended up with a smoking crater where the deal used to be. And the American failures almost all die from the same two mistakes. In 2008, the city of Chicago thought it had cracked it. It agreed to lease Midway Airport for $2.52 billion on a 99-year deal, what would have been the first big privatized airport in America. Investors lined up, contracts were signed. Champagne, presumably, on ice. Then the 2009 credit crash hit, and the winning consortium, which included an airport services firm, Citigroup, and an insurance giant, simply couldn't raise the money. The financing evaporated. The deal collapsed. Chicago, to its credit, kept the $126 million deposit and walked away. They tried again a few years later. That one fell apart too, when one of the last two bidders dropped out and the city refused to be left at the mercy of a single buyer. This is mistake one, and it's the same mistake the casino owners and the football club owners make. You price the deal on a rosy forecast and a mountain of borrowed money. And the moment reality wobbles, the debt doesn't care about your feelings. Even the great Macquarie did it. Its disastrous Indiana toll road venture was bought for too much, loaded with too much debt, and ended in bankruptcy. Overpay on borrowed money, and a guaranteed money machine becomes a guaranteed bankruptcy. The second mistake is subtler and more lethal. You buy the machine and discover someone else holds the off switch. St. Louis spent nearly 3 years trying to privatize Lambert Airport. A city-appointed group met behind closed doors 47 times, and the deeper they dug, the worse it looked. The airport needed something like $900 million of capital investment over the following 15 years. Money you, the new operator, would have to find. That CapEx is mandatory. But the fees you'd raise to pay for it? Gated by the airlines, capped by regulators. And every time you nudge a price up, you make the front page as the villain who's gouging travelers. In 2019, after public opposition boiled over, the mayor killed it. Dead. Before that, Stewart Airport in New York, the very first American airport privatized under the federal program, struggled so badly it was simply handed back to public ownership in 2007. Denver's big private terminal deal? Terminated by the city over delays and disputes. The pattern is brutal and consistent. You inherit every obligation and control none of the prices. You bought a money machine, and someone else kept the keys. And just to twist the knife, remember the crown jewel, the car park? It's under attack. When Uber and Lyft arrive at an airport, something predictable happens. Parking revenue per passenger climbs for a while, peaks about 2 years in, and then it starts to bleed, 3 to 7% a year, every year after. Why park for a week when a stranger will drop you at the door for $30? The airports are fighting back the only way landlords ever do, by charging the ride shares a fee for every single pickup and drop-off. Los Angeles alone expects to pull in around $100 million a year once its new rideshare fees are fully running. But make no mistake, the single most reliable profit center in the whole business is structurally shrinking, and the smartest owners know it. So step back and look at the whole strange machine.
It was never really an airport. The planes are the part that barely breaks even. The noisy, regulated, capped, airline-controlled charity wing of the operation. The actual business is a shopping mall with a parking empire bolted onto it, sitting on a piece of land that no competitor can ever build next to, because you cannot simply open a second airport across the street. You weren't buying runways. You were buying scarcity. A permanent, government-protected local monopoly on the most captive customers in the world. Get that right? In a country that lets you keep the profits, and you're Macquarie, quietly compounding billions. Get it wrong on borrowed money in a city that won't let you raise a price, and you're Chicago, handing back the deposit.
Scenario 1. The dream. You buy a fast-growing airport in a country that lets you actually own it and run it like a business. Passenger numbers climb. You squeeze the car park with dynamic pricing, fill the terminal with high-rent shops, sign a fat naming rights and advertising deal, and keep the planes ticking over at break-even just to keep the shoppers flowing. The operating profit is steady, but the real prize is the asset itself. A decade later, it's worth multiples of what you paid, and you sell your scarcity to the next fund in line. You barely made a fortune running it, you made a fortune owning it. Scenario 2. The nightmare. You win the bid in America with a huge headline price and a tower of debt. Then you read the fine print. $900 million in mandatory upgrades, fees you can't raise without airline approval, and a public that treats every price rise as a betrayal. Rideshares quietly eat your car park. The forecasts that justified your bid turn out to be fantasy. You're spending more than you're earning, you can't fix the prices, and the only thing keeping you afloat is the hope that someone, someday, takes this thing off your hands. Same two words, buy an airport, two completely different businesses. So, should you buy an airport? Honestly, if all you want is the money, there's a far easier way. You could just buy a slice of one of the big infrastructure funds, Macquarie or one of its rivals, and let them do all the bidding, all the borrowing, all the 47 closed-door meetings, while your investment quietly climbs. No CapEx monster, no furious mayor, no rideshare slowly draining your crown jewel at 3% a year. But a slice of a fund doesn't let you stand on a windswept rooftop and watch a runway you own carry 100,000 people somewhere, every single day, forever. And for the kind of person who buys an airport, that feeling might just be worth more than all the money on the table. Because here's the one rule that separates the people who get rich from the people who get ruined. Anyone can build a runway.
The trick is owning the car park next to it.
If you got something out of this one, hit subscribe, because next week we're breaking down the economics of owning something even more ridiculous. And tell me down in the comments, if someone handed you $1 billion tomorrow, would you buy an airport for the empire of it? Or would you take the boring, safe profit and just buy the fund instead? Drop it below. I read the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.